Obviously, I can't summarize a dense paper, thank you, Henry, in 10 minutes, and I don't want to be the only malefactor who doesn't come in on time and under budget. But let me try to hit on some broad themes to see if I can either provoke any questions or perhaps even tempt some of you to delve into the details by, as Henry says, actually reading the paper. So, bottom line up front, international missile controls are weak, they're deteriorating, and this is both in terms of arms control among the major nuclear powers and nonproliferation. So mine is a fairly bleak assessment across the board. Uh, Nuclear and missile nonproliferation, nuclear primarily, missile secondarily, has been our primary policy focus for the three post-Cold War decades. But this is now being eclipsed by the return of great power nuclear rivalry. And it's now widely understood that the United States is in a nuclear competition with both Russia and China. But I would argue it's still less appreciated that this is mostly a three-way missile technology race a la the 1960s and 1970s. As Dan mentioned, you have competition in maneuverable hypersonic missiles up to intercontinental ranges, air-launched ballistic missiles, an oldie but goodie from the Cold War that never happened but now is happening, MIRVing, with China fielding road mobile MIRV systems, and Russia, its new monster Satan II heavy ICBM that it happily brags can carry enough MIRVs for a single missile to destroy the entire country of France or state of Texas. Not to mention President Putin's exoticies, like his nuclear-powered and armed cruise missile of virtually limitless range and duration. And as both of the prior speakers mentioned, the United States is lagging across the board by any programmatic measure, essentially across the board in all of these areas. So we're now coming to grips with the fact that we are in a great power arms race, and we are not in a strong position, at least right now, in terms of competing and leveraging. So in sum, today's calculations about strategic nuclear balances between the major nuclear powers center on the quality, quantity, and types of missile delivery systems and defenses against them. So this is a new nuclear arms race, but unlike the Cold War, this time it's tripolar come multipolar. If you add in India, Pakistan, Britain, France, not even counting North Korea or Iran as minor nuclear powers. And it's still nascent, but it is gathering steam, and it's already nearly uncontrolled. The New START Treaty has just been extended for 5 years as expected, but this is really hanging on by a thread. The Obama administration, and towards the end, even the Trump administration, made serious plays to renegotiate a new strategic treaty, either bilaterally with Russia or with the Trump administration on a trilateral basis with China. And it was never even close. There was never even progress to the point of framing out the broad outlines of a negotiation. And nothing has changed. As a matter of fact, all of those conditions have just gotten worse. So I don't doubt that the Biden administration will make a sincere run at negotiating a replacement to New START, hopefully continuing on a trilateral basis to bring the Chinese in. But the chances of that happening in the 5 years we have are, well, it's going to be a tough road to hoe. And so, we face the prospect that just after the Biden administration leaves, if it's a one-term administration or early in its second term, that we will be facing an uncontrolled nuclear arms race on a tripolar basis with others in that fueling it. So New START, for all of that, is the only treaty in the world that controls missiles. The NPT doesn't. Just ask Iran. And China, India, Pakistan, Britain, France, not included. So we have a brief respite from an uncontrolled arms race, but it's going to be brief. This That's all we have is New START. And oh, by the way, New START doesn't control any of these new technologies that we've been talking about, or of course, again, anything not U.S. and Russia. So New START isn't doing much to control this race, but it's all we have, and we're probably not going to have it for very much longer. So why does all this matter? I would argue because an uncontrolled nuclear arms race among China, Russia, and the United States could create unpredictable strategic instabilities, as has been mentioned, arms racing instabilities, but also, and more worrisomely, crisis instability. It could also provoke new nuclear proliferation. And here I'm thinking not just of the usual suspects, the rogue states, but countries like Japan, South Korea, and even Australia, where in strategic circles in those countries, there are quiet conversations going on about whether France had the right idea in terms of if you really want to protect yourself, can you rely on extended deterrence? Maybe you need your own nuclear weapons. And again, and as Henry said, I would argue it's the missiles that matter almost more than the weapons themselves, especially for nonproliferation. The comparative weakness of missile controls versus nuclear controls is a huge loophole. The longest range missiles are as challenging to develop as the warheads, and we've seen that. I mean, we see that right now with North Korea. North Korea has mastered nuclear weapons, but is still trying to miniaturize, toughen up those weapons, and develop intercontinental range systems. So, simply put, nuclear and missile proliferation are the same side of the are two sides of the same coin and should be treated as such. All right, quickly, what is to be done about all this? On the non-proliferation side, the prospects in the near and even long term, I would say, are pretty unpromising. What we have at this point is the Missile Technology Control Regime, the MTCR, that does not address most of these new technologies because it's been frozen by political inaction, because you simply have countries like Russia who will block progress and consensus on anything meaningful. One thing we can do, I think, would be to reinvent the MTCR by convening a small core group of like-minded countries and starting to do more than the MTCR is able to do. That's not much, but it would be better than nothing. On perhaps the more important arms control front, I would argue, and this reflects what John said, in particular, divergent geostrategic motivations and asymmetric capabilities, with the U.S. not having a lot of leverage in any of those asymmetric capabilities, other than perhaps missile defense, make trilateral arms control unlikely anytime soon. But I think we can start proposing some avenues that the United States should start pressing on, not because they're likely to bear fruit anytime soon, but because we can start bringing political pressure to bear in that sort of competitive environment that John was speaking of, and also because we can start putting political pressure on Russia and in particularly China to start thinking about what an arms control arrangement would look like from their perspective. So things like ban or caps on long-range and or nuclear-armed maneuverable hypersonic missiles. We're not going to stop the hypersonic genie at this point. Hypersonics are too important for conventional warfighting, but we might be able to negotiate some kind of ban or more likely cap on the longest range systems and or on nuclear armaments for them. Right now, Russia is the only country that has said they are going to use hypersonics as a strategic nuclear delivery vehicle. China hasn't said anything, but we suspect that they probably will. France is expected to be using its hypersonic as a nuclear delivery vehicle, and we have said that we're not planning to do so for now. I would also say pushing a trilateralized INF It won't work. China has all the advantage. It won't join that. But if the US and Russia could join together in proposing and calling for and justifying a trilateralized INF, it would at least put pressure on China to explain why they're not interested in that. More importantly, it would finally get China to no longer have this opportunity that they've enjoyed so much to have their arms control cake and eat it too. That arms control is something that their main strategic rivals do between themselves, while China eschews it and engages in a slow motion arms race that it's been doing successfully for the last 20 years. And then also, I would propose again a U.S.-Russian deployment moratorium on INF forces in Europe. That's something that Russia has expressed tentative openness to. And again, the idea there would be for the US and Russia to find common ground to turn up the heat against China. A theme here is that China is the long pole in the tent, and it's not going to be easily cajoled to belly up to the arms control negotiating table. It will need to be pressured, not only diplomatically, but by the United States embracing a dual track strategy, meaning arms racing towards arms control. So let me finish here with the conclusion from my actual paper, so that you will have at least heard one paragraph from it. Ultimately, solutions will not come from clever proposals. They will come instead from the realignment of hard-nosed calculations across various capitals. The most important aspect of a new U.S. approach to arms control and nonproliferation is therefore to achieve and utilize negotiating leverage. In practice, this means demonstrating to China and Russia that they will gain nothing by arms racing against the United States and its allies, and demonstrating to those allies that America has their back, all while offering reasonable and pragmatic proposals to control the new nuclear arms race, to control the temptation by our allies to hedge, and to prevent new proliferation spirals. And by the way, when I say new nuclear arms race, once again, I'm really saying missile technology race. Thank you.